This video gives direct mail tips and talks about a number of different things you must consider when you are using direct mail in your business. And there's a tidbit in here that's critical to your profit. And I describe exactly how to use direct mail to maximize your profits, and really why direct mail is one of the only ways that you can maximize your profits. You'll also hear Tom Kelly of Be Safe in this video. The two of us are discussing direct mail.
So I'm going to speak to direct mail for a couple of minutes because it really does have a place in your marketing plan. And I think when we talk about the most successful or the source that will drive the most sales, direct mail can do that for you, but you have to be careful with it because it can get very expensive, and you're kind of taking a risk with doing it. It wasn't that long ago where many lawn care service companies, and I'm talking mostly fertilization and some of the big companies, True Green and Scotts, their main source of sales came from direct mail. After telemarketing was kind of let go, however many years ago, it seems like forever now. When they had to switch away from telemarketing to direct mail, they just pumped millions and millions of dollars into direct mail, and it's not always the most cost-efficient means to make sales, but there is absolutely a place for it. And somebody was asking about statistics in regards to direct mail. So let me throw a couple things out there and see what you guys think. Direct mail, you can typically expect a less than 1% response rate. So when you send out a direct mail piece, 10,000, 100,000, or even, in some of the bigger companies' case, 1 million pieces. I remember one year at Lawn Dog, we sent out 500,000 direct mail pieces, and we got a spring nor'easter. We got a snowstorm that wasn't forecasted, and it literally, it was devastating. It was a lot of money to put into direct mail. So that's what I'm talking about in regards to the risk. But you should only expect about a 1% return from it. And basically what you're doing is you're generating estimates. You should be able to close those estimates at a pretty high rate. And I think in this particular plan, we've got them in at 62%. So if we were going to generate 200 direct mail leads, we're going to expect 124 sales from that. And that's that's a fairly high amount as a percent to what we're doing from this entire plan. But it's going to cost a few bucks to do that. So, Jonathan, have you had any experience with direct mail, or what are your feelings on that in today's day and age?
No, I think there's a move away from direct mail because the web is so incredibly, it can be so successful for so many companies, and it's perceived to be near free, though it's not really. And so I see direct mail as this awesome opportunity. I still love direct mail, but you nailed it. You nailed it on several fronts. There's a lot of guys that don't even get a 1% return. A quick example, you got to be very aware of your market. So, for example, if you're mailing, let's use residential, if you're mailing to a street where 2 out of every 10 people on that street are even a potential buyer of the service you're selling, you're mailing out an awful lot of marketing pieces that have zero chance of getting a return. So only 2 out of 10 even have a chance of even having a person respond. So the very first question direct mail is, am I targeting exactly the right areas with the highest propensity to buy, the highest potential? And so if you don't, your returns could be 0.25%. They could be a disaster. You nailed it on the snow. If it's raining on the day the direct mail gets delivered, or it's overcast, kills returns. So there's all these variables in direct mail that will just kill you. You can mail the same piece to the same area, and you can get a 2% return, and you mail it again 3 weeks later, and you get an 1/8% return. And why? It's hard to explain sometimes. So, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. I think the guys that do it are going to win in the long term. And so here's how I look at direct mail. I think the web is it, and I spend a lot of money on the web, and a lot of guys are shocked when they come to find out what it takes to get good SEO rankings. It really does cost a lot of money, but it's the best money you can spend. But the best way to grow your company from a profit standpoint is with direct mail, and here's why. This is my opinion, of course, but my strategy, my belief is you spend a whole lot of money to get yourself out there on the web so that people are coming to you. So I'm using a residential example again. And they're finding you, and you land on one street because you sell a client there, and then you land on another street a few miles away, and then you land on another street a few miles away from that, And if you only rely on the web, you have a business that's scattered across your service market. All the money's in density, and most guys hate residential, especially on the lawn mowing side, because they don't think there's any money in it, but there's a ton of money in it when you're dense. And so direct mail is how you get dense. You can't get dense just using the web. So the web drives where you land, and then when you land on that street, you go in to own that street, and you own it through direct mail. And that's why I'm a huge believer in direct mail. And the streets that the web drives you to and you land on those streets that have a very low chance of many people on that street being a buyer of your service, you don't direct mail to that street. You know your market, and you only direct mail to the streets with the highest percentage of potential buyers, and the strategy is you go in to own those streets, and you do it with direct mail. And that's my belief, and that's why I so believe in direct mail. And yes, it is expensive. It is a more expensive sell, but it's the best sell because it leads to the most profit because you build density.
Yeah, and you know what? You're nailing it, man. Because and I can tell by the questions that are coming in here. Density is absolutely the most important part of profitability. And when it comes to lawn mowing, especially, if you can park that truck and do 6 lawns, I mean, that's as good as having, you know, a 50,000 square foot property, and plus it's going to be much more profitable. One of our branches in Portland at Lawn Dog years ago, we had 750 customers in just one zip code, and the guy would literally just go and park his truck and treat like 15 lawns at a time. They were tiny little, you know, 3,000 square foot lawns. I mean, but he'd do 40 lawns before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was by far our most profitable route. But you know, the people are asking questions. It's interesting that the way you talked about SEO or trying to generate leads on the web, and how direct mail does have a place in your marketing campaign. But many people are asking about that United States Postal Service every door direct mail option, and they really do. They reduce the cost of it, but I'm not a huge fan of it because it doesn't allow you to target the way a good list does. So I think the importance of having a good list far outweighs, and it's going to cost a little bit more. But I think instead of just blanketing, you know, certain carrier routes, if you can really drill down where you want to make the sales and where you want to mail those pieces, that's about how you build density, and that's how you improve your profitability.
Yeah. Can I make a quick comment there, Tom?
Yeah, go for it.
I think this is really, what you brought up something I think is worth spending just an extra minute on, because it is the difference maker in profitable marketing strategy. And I'm going to give an exaggerated example, but if you use this mindset in thinking about marketing and especially direct mail, it'll help. So I'll give you an example. Let's again use residential example. So you're out and you're doing estimates and you're meeting with clients, and this is again a very exaggerated example. And you have all these clients, and you go out there and you meet with them, and you walk away from the property and you think, you know, I like that guy. Every time I meet with him, he's a great guy. He's a great customer. And you just keep having these little experiences. And then one day you notice, and again, this is a silly example, but one day you notice, you know what? That guy that I just liked, he lives in about a $400,000 house, and he's got a BMW in the garage. And then a week later, you're like, oh, that guy, his house is about $400,000, and what do you know? He's got a BMW in the garage. And what you start to do is you start to see these trends, and you're like, you know, the guys I tend to like, they tend to be entrepreneurs, doctors, chiropractors, or some kind of professional. They tend to live in about a $400,000 house. What do you know? They tend to drive a BMW. And then you go to your mailing list company and you say, hey, I want to buy a list of everybody in my city that lives in a house between $350,000 and $450,000 that has a BMW, and so on and so forth. Now, that's a little more expensive list to buy. You're going to spend some money to buy that list. It's not free. But now you're mailing to a group of people that the entire demographic probably has close to 100% chance of being your buyer, instead of mailing to a street where 2 out of every 10 people or 3 out of every 10 people might be your buyer. So what you've done is you've shifted some of your expense. If you're spending 28 cents a piece to get bulk mail and postcards out the door, now you've spent several pennies per name to buy the name, but you've immediately eliminated thousands of pieces that you would have sent that were a complete waste because you weren't mailing to a specific list. So exaggerated example, but that's the mindset in direct mail. How can you narrow the market you're focusing on and only get mail to the people that are your most likely buyers?
So it's almost as if you and I conspired about what to talk about during this, and I want everybody to know that we really didn't. We're kind of doing this on the fly, but what's happening is what I think I kind of wanted to happen, is that we hit on specific things that literally make the biggest difference to implementing a marketing plan. So let's stay on this for a minute, because I think we need to actually take that exaggerated example that you gave with the BMW, but bring it down to a realistic point of view. So in my opinion, the list is huge. So yes, it is more inexpensive to do that every door direct mail. You can blanket, as much as you want. Bulk mail is an option. But I've always been a firm believer in that if you can identify who your best prospects are, you're going to increase your closing percents drastically, or even your response. So if you're getting a 0.75% direct mail response, by increasing the validity or the quality of your list, you can get a 1% or even a higher than 1% response. And when you're talking about the numbers we're dealing with here in direct mail, that's a make or break, 0.25%. So I think that the BMW example is perfect. But when you get right down to it, you want to deal with a couple of parameters in regards to your list. You want to only deal with single-family dwelling units. So if we're talking about residential here, you want to clean out the condos, you want to clean out the apartments, you want to get rid of the renters, you want to deal with single-family dwelling units only, and you want to use two things as your main cutoff with who you want to mail something to. It has to be home value and income level. Most list companies can actually take it beyond that, and you're absolutely right, man. You can get lists based on specific interests. Whether people like to play golf, whether what kind of car they drive, whether they have a vacation home, kids, everything. So in our case, if you're trying to sell organic lawn care, whether or not somebody has children is a big deal, right? So if you can specify that in your list, it's very important. But I think it's different in different parts of the country, but you want home value and income level to be the two main things. And I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, Jonathan, but I think it's important that we let these guys know that the list is a big deal.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna second that with one little comment, and that is that's not that expensive a list to buy. The common list is the one with the home value, the age, the demographic, a few demographic pieces of information, for example, the age of the person. That's a very common list to be able to get a hold of, so it's not a lot. It's not very expensive. When you go and add my exaggerated example of the BMW to it, that gets more expensive because now you're matching up multiple lists, and so it ups the price. So, Tom, the list you're talking about, it's a very affordable, doable list, and I'd add one little thing that I just learned over the years. Part of building your company is about building your company with clients you like, and clients that you like doing business with, that pay you on time, that you don't want to build your business around a company you hate because you're dealing with a bunch of people that drive you crazy. And years ago, I spent $200, had this huge wall map of my market made. This was back when I was still working the phones at CityTurf in the early days, hung this thing up on my wall, and every time I got off the phone, I put a push pin in the wall for a lead and put different push pin in the wall for a sell. And the thing that happened was I realized that in my market, there was this one section in my entire market that was about a half a mile by a mile, and that's where all our best customers were. They would buy anything we wanted to sell. They weren't million-dollar homes. They were in $275,000 to $450,000 homes, and just that little activity clued us in where we wanted to be, and then we bought Tom a list exactly like what you just described, and we used that. But we bought that list in that area, and that. So add to what you just said, what kind of homes, how old are they? Now the next question is in what area, and you can get even more refined than just the zip code. And so that's how we've done exactly, Tom, what you described many, many times. It's a very successful, very affordable approach.